Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling IQ 101. And we got a special guest with us today. It is Dave D-Struction of Wrestlpro.
What's going on, man?
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Good.
Pretty good.
So basically, for our people that don't really know who you are, just give us kind of a quick rundown of, how you got into Wrestlpro and sort of a little bit of your background.
All right. Well, in 2012, I think it was June of 2012, I attended an indie promotion labeled Pro Wrestling Syndicate. I was in the crowd as a fan. I was in like the 6th row, and I think like that night they had like Colt Cabana on the show. They had the Godfather, Matt Hardy, before he lost his mind. we had him on it. It was a bunch of people on the show, and I saw a flyer earlier that day, and I told a bunch of my buddies, let's check this out. I haven't seen it. And they also advertised Sid Justice or Sid Vicious, whatever the hell you want to call him. So I went to that show, and I met Pat Buck in the hallway, and he'd asked, if I'm enjoying myself, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, yeah, it was a good time, And he was just at that time starting up his partnership with the partner of that company, and he had mentioned he was going to try to start school, and I've always loved it. I've been a fan my entire life. I might have gotten a little bit of a late start compared to a lot of these other guys on the scene, but at the time I was 27 years old, and I've always had the dream. I grew up with a best close friend of mine. We had the dream to become like the next tag team champions, and we did the whole backyard wrestling ordeal, and he passed away in 2007, and I kind of just made a promise to myself that someday I'm going to try and pursue this, just trying to get myself in somewhat shape, and kind of chase the dream ordeal. So I started training in 2012 under Pat Buck in PWS, and it kind of just took off from there. I was only training for 3 months when he told me that I was going to be in my first match in September of that year. And it was going to be like a 25-man battle royal. And the way business works is if you can sell the place out, and when you're first starting off, that's going to determine your success. Like if you can promote yourself, you always got to put yourself out there. So I hoard myself all summer to all my friends and family. And I told them, I was like, listen, I'm going to have this first match. You got to come out and support. So we had about like a lot of stories you'll hear from guys in the business will say that their first match was in front of 12 people or 10 people or 20 or maybe 100. I was spoiled. I definitely was spoiled. I had my first match in front of like 1,400 people.
Wow.
So that was September 2012, and a lot of my friends and family were there, which was cool because they started chanting my name, and it was like a trickle effect where the crowd was like, who is this guy? And all of a sudden they started chanting my name. So I was actually able to build some steam pretty early. And Pat saw that in me. He also saw the fact that I'm marketable, and I can actually, market myself and try to pack the place as much as I possibly can. So that's what I did. And, I trained under him. I came up with a lot of guys. There was about 12 guys to start the school. And to this day, given the revamp of Wrestlpro, that school's up to like 50 people.
Wow.
So it's probably, and I think Pat told me this the other day, it's probably the biggest wrestling school in the country. I mean, as far as their members and their, not counting like the Performance Center, because that's like, an extension of the brand of WWE, but
right. This
is like as far as trainees and people that want to be in the business, that's, we're top notch as far as training. We have Pat training us, but we're also trained by Dan Moff. We're trained by the Carinos. We're trained by Mario Baccara. Like all these indie guys, legends on the indie scene are helping us grow. And for the first year and a half, I was on a roll, man. I had a lot of cool matches. I was featured in a lot of cool stuff. My claim to fame, which a lot of people make fun of me to this day because I talked about it too much, was my match with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. And it was like the coolest thing. For me, it was the coolest thing in the world. I was like, holy shit. And I grew up watching this guy. So it was a pretty surreal experience. I had a really good time with that. But right after that, when I thought my steam was like at its all-time high, I was in practice in 2014, and I was taking like the most basic move, and I tore my ACL and I tore my meniscus. So then I was like, totally discouraged. And I didn't know how long it was going to be or if I could ever do it again. And it took me 10 months, but I got back in the ring. And then, long story short, it's just fast forward 4.5 years, I'm finally starting to realize that I might be more valuable as a voice rather than a wrestler. And if I want to be able to play with my future kids and walk around and remember what I had for lunch, not have a fucking mush of a head, maybe it's a better idea for me to take that route. So I've actually embraced it pretty well and taken on a role as a, head commentator for the company. And the sky's the limit for this company, man. There's so many cool things happening for us in the next couple months. It's been a ride, man. So 4.5 years later, I'm still here. I'm still having a good time.
Yeah, it's awesome. They're branching out to like Florida and other places in New York. So
yeah, I mean, we're signed up to do WrestleCon, which is the biggest independent wrestling convention during WrestleMania weekend. And I don't know if I'm going to have a commentary role on that or not, but I'm definitely going to go. I'm going to go and support my guys, and a couple of the more talented guys are going to be featured on this, along with bringing friends of Pat Buck's. Like his best friend is Ryback, and a couple other guys that he's well known with. He's good friends with Cole Cabana. He's good friends with Bull James. Guys like that will go a long way as far as helping us promote this company and helping us grow and having like this revolving door of talent that we can just kind of just pick from, like a big pool,
Yeah.
Would when you hurt your knee, is that what made you want to did that lead you into going into commentary?
Well, the thing is, I went to school right out of high school. No, but I went to school with a high school, and then I went to college, and I graduated with a sports journalism degree. So I always liked to write. That was my thing. And then right out of college, I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting to become a sports broadcaster. That was the goal. And so I always had the experience, and I worked for the Giants, which they can go after themselves because I'm a massive Cowboys fan. So, but it was fun at the time because I got to meet all the players and then meet like John Madden and Troy Aikman and shit like that.
Oh, that's cool.
But I always had the background in broadcasting, so I knew in my head I was like, now if all else fails, or I'll do this at the end of my career when I can't walk anymore. And then I realized there's so many life events coming up, where I was getting married and I was trying to just start my own life and whatnot, and I just didn't want to. I realized over time that there was so much new, better talent out there in the ring that it would maybe be best for me to just kind of take a step aside and let these guys go nuts while I can call the action and use my broadcasting background. So that's what I did when I first started coming back into the scene, because obviously when you tear your ACL, you're out for a little while as far as you don't want to see the light of day because you're pissed. You're upset. You just don't want to deal with anybody. But as I was slowly brought back into Pro Wrestling Syndicate, I was brought back in a commentary role, which was kind of cool because, I got to commentate alongside Sam Roberts, who has his own show on Sirius. And he's a good friend of mine because I was actually hired by Sirius Radio and I was working for them for a little while.
Oh, cool.
And and also, I got to commentate next to Ashley Massaro, which was fun for me at the time. I was like, oh, cool. There was a lot of cool perks to it. And
David Adams.
So I always had that itch. Oh yeah, and then there's David Adams, who's a good buddy of mine. He's got a voice for ring announcer. That's for sure. He's a good dude.
Big fan
of the business. What's up?
A face for it too.
Yeah, face for it too. I don't know. He's a character in itself, but that's where I first started kind of getting into that realm where I was like, okay, maybe I could do this. But then I would talk to my friend Pat Kenny, who's otherwise known as Simon Diamond.
Yeah.
He's from ECW days, and he's like a side mentor of mine because he's a friend of mine. And he told me, we did I ran my own podcast for about a year, and he was a guest of my podcast. And I said to him, I really want to come back and wrestle. And he's like, why? Why would you want to do that to yourself? Why don't you can you make it in another way? I'm pretty sure you can, and he kind of instilled that in me first, where I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'll definitely get into commentating. And I still was stubborn because once you're in this business, it's very hard to come to terms that you're not going to be wrestling anymore and you want to just keep wrestling. You just want to do it. Whether you think you're good or you think you're the shit. you still just want to keep going. And that's what I did. I came back. I started wrestling again. I had a couple singles matches here and there. Had another Battle Royal spot, this, that, and the other. And then you just realize over time that it's just like, all right, now, like, what's next? And just this past September, on my birthday, I wrestled a Wrestlpro character named Chris Avery Kuling. And he's undefeated. He's undefeated. He's a fucking lunatic. And he's a hard-hitting monster. And he whipped my ass. So at the end of that match, I was kind of like looking in the mirror, like, you know what? maybe it's time to just kind of consider the alternate route.
He has one of the coolest entrances at Wrestlpro with the chains and stuff like that. Yeah, I was there that night. He's an interesting dude.
It's a funny thing about him is because the reason why this gimmick has come to life is because of all the failed gimmicks he's always had. You know, like he's been at so many different promotions. He's been wrestling for like 6 or 7 years. Yeah. And everything that he's attempted just didn't really work out for him. So this is like a culmination of frustration.
He was
this guy, and he's taking it out on everybody, and it's unfortunate for anybody that gets in the ring with him because he hits hard.
He was part of Monsters Island with Raven, right?
Right. It was another failed thing. You know, like the Monsters Island thing was cool, but then like his character kind of fell to the wayside. You know, as how was it, Dr. Acula or something like that? So like even he was that. He was the Strangler. He was just all sorts of wacky things that just weren't working out for him. So finally, you know, anybody would snap, you know, after all those times of just over and over and over again told, like, okay, now you're going to wear this silly costume and wrestle like this and yada yada. And it's not fair, you know, for him. Yeah. Because he's a very talented individual. So for him to be in this spot, in this role right now is really, really cool to watch and see develop.
Yeah, the character, and then I don't really watch like the entrance videos, but his entrance video was kind of neat too, where like he's like all shackled and stuff. It was pretty cool.
Right, yeah, and like the vignettes that we produced leading up to his debut were just awesome. You know, we got a really good video editor guy. We got a lot of cool things happening, and something that I take personal pride in is that we stand out in those ways where our production and our vignettes and our promos and all that, like the cool shit in wrestling, except for just the you know, let alone the wrestling part itself, we have a lot of stuff that makes, you know, separates us from everybody else.
Yeah, it's the truth. You guys are top notch with that.
Definitely. I think Wrestlpro is definitely like becoming like the #1 independent jersey company to me, maybe even in the whole United States, all in general.
We're on our way. You know, there's always kinks to work out, and we don't have $1 million like a lot of other companies. We don't have a TV deal or anything like that, but Pat is, ever since Pat took this under his own wing, you know, by himself and didn't have to align himself with any partners or anything like that, just did this solo work, it's been so much better. You know, it's been so much more relaxed. The locker room's happy. We're always in a good mood. Everybody's having a good time. You know, it was very cutthroat back in the day. When it was something else, you know, Pro Wrestling Syndicate, for what it was, like, we did jam-packed shows and we did have great talent, and some of the talent transferred over to Wrestlpro. Some of the guys didn't want to make peace with the fact that there was a new company, and they just kind of either aligned themselves with the other guy or they just went their own way, which is cool too. You know, there's independent wrestling. You can do what you want.
When you were talking to Pat in the hallway that day, did you know it was Pat Buck?
Nobody knew it was Pat Buck. You know what I'm saying? Like, Pat Buck was... he'll tell you this a million times over. He'll still get announced on a show under a bunch of names, and people will still say, "Who's Pat Buck?" It's unfortunate because he's probably the most talented wrestler I've ever been in the ring with, and been trained with, and he just knows he's got a mind for this business. So at the time when I was talking to him, I had no idea who he was. And it's funny because minutes after the interaction in the hallway, I go back to the crowd and take my seat, and I guess Sid was supposed to be on that show. He was booked on that show and never showed up, right? So Pat took it upon himself, and I'll pride myself in telling this story all the time because it's one of the coolest, funniest stories ever. Pat decided he could go out and go into the middle of the ring and cut a promo about Sid not being there. And at the time, I was like, all right, no big deal. Like, it's just, all right, guy didn't show up, no big deal. But he literally takes his phone and puts it to the microphone. He goes, we're going to call them together. And we're going to call Sid and find out why he's not here. And then it went to voicemail, and like, you know, he let the crowd like curse him out, and like just this huge thing where I was looking at I was looking at Pat in the ring, and I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? Like, is this happening right now? So like, kind of like right then and there, I was like, this guy, he don't take no shit. I'm like, that's somebody I want to, if I am going to try to get into this, that's somebody I would want to like kind of get into it with, you know? So it was cool. And then it turned out to be better because, in replacement, it was supposed to be Matt Hardy versus Sid. It turned out to be Matt Hardy versus, I think it was, Jay Vicious, which was Jay Lethal dressed as Sid. Yeah. So it was actually really funny. Like, it turned out to be a success. And, you know, from there, it was off to the races from there. I think that was one of the coolest things that anybody could ever do. And that was actually, I'm pretty sure it was before or right after the whole CM Punk, original pipe bomb. So it was something that you never saw, you know, like a promoter, like exposing the fact that somebody just screwed you over, you know, so he wasn't going to let it happen. And it was actually pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah, he's had an interesting career, Pat Buck, because I've been listening to the conversation with Ryback and how he's been all over the WWE, like Ohio Valley Wrestling, and he was going to go to Florida and him waitering at restaurants with Ryback.
Yeah, man. First of all, shout out to that podcast because it's one of the best listens on iTunes right now. You know, like Conversation with the Big Guy is very funny. It's very real. And I knew all these stories, you know, before he's putting them out there. Pat always told me his journey, you know, and it's very unfortunate sometimes it's just the right look or the right guy at the time to catch the break. Yeah. You know, I hung out with this past weekend on Friday, I literally had an hour-long conversation with Santino. And he told me that it was like his job and his role was legitimately right time, right moment. Like Pat Patterson or Michael Hayes was looking for a foreign guy that knew how to speak Italian, and he just raised his hand and says, I can speak Italian, you know, and then boom, next thing you know, he signs to a contract, he wins the Intercontinental title, you know, it's the craziest things can happen when you're in the right spot, and Pat just he was never given that chance, I guess, and so now he's making the most of it now, and I think, to be completely honest, I think he made the right move, you know, like this is where he's good, you know, he's good at. And now he's wrestling more, which is great. And you know, sometimes promoters and people think it's kind of marky to wrestle on your own shows or main event your own shows. I think it's fantastic because if he's going to be, you know, if he's as good as he is, and he is very, very talented, I think he should wrestle on shows. I mean, why would you not want top-notch wrestling on your own show? If you have confidence in yourself, then why not? You know, so true. This past Friday, he won the freaking tag team championship with Ryback. Yeah. So I was like, this is great, and I got to call that action. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Derek says it all the time that Pat Buck is like.
That's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah. I think like as far as like promoters go of like any company, I think Pat Buck is like the best wrestling promoter that I know. And he's by far, like, I think he's probably one of, like, the top talents at Wrestlpro. And you can even see it, like, Cody Rhodes put him on the list to fight. And people are like, who's Pat Buck? You know, that just shows how great he is.
Yeah, it goes to show you, like, you know, as far as you said it yourself, like, you know, some wrestling promotions, the promoter will put himself on the card, but the promoter winds up being some out of shape piece of crap that can't work worth the shit, and then it's like, oh, okay, you're only marking out for yourself, where Pat's taking full advantage of the fact that he's talented. You know what I mean? So it's a different story.
Hey Dave, I just want to know what would you say would be like more difficult to call? Because you commentate football as well. Do you think it's harder to call football or a wrestling match?
To be honest with you, since I've done both now, I want to say. The only way you can gauge it is the speed of what's happening in front of you. So when you're watching a football game, only so much can happen. You know, the running back's going to get the ball, or there's going to be a throw, and there's going to be a tackle. That's it. You know, like there's not much to it. Wrestling, there's shit going on all the time. You know, like imagine like last night or 2 nights ago, I was calling a 6-man match, like 6-way scramble or whatever. There's 6 guys doing a whole bunch of flippy-doo shit that I can't really keep up with. And it's like, oh, like that's hard. You know, it's not easy. Sometimes you'll have a co-host or, you know, a guy on color or a guy on play-by-play. But if you're by yourself, man, it's one of the most difficult things in the world to call a wrestling match, especially when it's multi-man. And especially with nowadays where the style of wrestling is so acrobatic and, you know, and it's not so much brute anymore. Like I'm I'm a mark for the heavyweights always. It's just the way I am. Like that's the way I grew up. I'm a Brock Lesnar guy. I'm a Ryback guy. I'm a Kevin Owens guy. I like the bigger style wrestler. I mean, my favorite of all time is Shawn Michaels, so that kind of goes against that. But for me, I just think that those matches are just so much more fun to call because it's so hard hitting. But the more difficult ones are the ones that are just guys just jumping all over the place, and it's just the hardest just to keep up.
Sure. With when you do like commentary at Wrestlpro, do you do it like the traditional way, like you look at like a monitor, or are you just like watching the ring like with your own eyes?
No, I'm literally like the last 2 nights I did it where I was right at ringside. I was literally like maybe 4 feet from the post on the corner of the ring, and I called what I saw in the ring. No monitor.
Nice.
So if something's on the other side of the ring, tough shit. I can't get to it. There's no way.
Quick question. So when you commentate with Sam Roberts, did he teach you, or did you kind of teach him things, or is it like how did that work out?
Well, Sam Roberts is obviously a professional. He's been in the business for a long time, hence where he's at right now. His podcast is great. Sirius XM is awesome. Yep. He's a mark. He's a huge mark for wrestling. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a big, big fan. So he's providing that. It's funny because Pat did give me the kudos on our commentary from the last show and said that it worked well. Okay. That it was just it was almost like a conversation rather than like calling every single move and saying little chime-ins here and there. It was a conversation between two guys watching wrestling. So it was very unorthodox as far as one guy was calling the moves, another guy was filling it in. Like, for instance, right now, if you're watching Raw, it's Michael Cole, and then there's the other two guys talking, filling in the blanks. Michael Cole is calling all the moves. And then I strive to be more over Ronaldo. I think that guy's friggin' fantastic. Yeah. I think he's awesome. And I talked to him on Twitter a couple times, personal messages and stuff, and asking him pointers and stuff. And I'm telling you, it's an art. I mean, I don't try to be the best, but I told a couple guys yesterday, or 2 days ago when the shows were over, I said, what the hell with this shit, man? I'm going to be the best one day, instead of, everybody doing a JR voice or something else, maybe they'll be doing a Dave Sturch voice. Who knows how?
That's it. Nice. So if you, let's say the injury never happened, would you have rather been doing wrestling, or would you rather be doing commentary like you're doing now?
No, man. That's a hard question because, to be honest with you, after the injury, and I tell a couple people this, you're scared. You're not as willing to do certain things that you were doing before you got hurt. Yeah. I swear to God that there was, I was more of a grounded pound kind of wrestler where I never really jump off the top or anything like that. I might have done it twice in practice. You know what I mean? Our finishing move when I was a tag team partner with Damian Gibbs was me jumping off the second rope and landing like a flying spear. Wow. It was cool. I was the most acrobatic I've ever been in my life. So I was all right, this is awesome. But then even going in after the Hacksaw Jim Duggan match, I was actually booked to be in a suicidal six-way match. Yeah. So all of a sudden I'm oh shit, I gotta do something to wow the crowd. So I had worked out a spot with Matt McIntosh that I was gonna spear him. If you've ever seen, I think Big E does it sometimes, where the guy's on the outside on the apron and he spears him through the ropes and lands on the wall. Yep. I was gonna do that. So I was ready to take risks. You know what I mean? I was kind of okay, you know what, I can do this shit. And then once you get hurt, man, it's a mental breakdown where now it takes you 2 months to walk, and then it takes you 4 months to jog, and then 8 months to run, and then 10 months later I'm back in the ring, and I do a spot with the Blue World Order in the Rumble. Stevie Richards, Blue Meanie, and Nova, and they took care of me. They're the best, you know what I mean? But I couldn't do much because I was well, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Yeah. What's going to happen if this guy chucks me over the top rope and I land wrong? Am I going to tear my ACL again? So it's really hard to say if the injury never happened. But to be honest with you, man, it's weird to say this. And I hated life. Don't get me wrong. I hated life when I was down with that injury. But the injury might have been the best thing that ever happened, to be honest. It's kind of weird to say that, but it's very possible.
It's an awesome comeback, though. On the verge of losing it and then regaining your confidence and finding a new outlet. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, because at first, to be honest, after I came back from injury, I only did like 2 matches with Pro Wrestling Syndicate, and then I was still just kind of just a bitter asshole. I was hard to deal with. I was just kind of just upset about what my role was and this, that, and the other, and I was just a bitter piece of shit. And Pat was like, "Dude, just leave," and I got kicked out. I was gone for a little while. I was gone from Pro Wrestling Syndicate for a little while, and I still wanted to wrestle, so I was wrestling on these small little tiny shows in Avenel and this, that, and the other, and I was like, still seeing the boys or whatever. I was trying to stay in contact with some of the guys, but I was hated by a lot of guys for a little while just because of the things I was saying. I had a big mouth at the time, and I was just really upset about a lot of stuff. So it's funny because like days before the breakup between Pat and his partner, I got a phone call from one of the guys on the roster that were in the know that it was going to happen, and he said, "You know what? Maybe now's a good time if you want to reach out to some of these guys and see if we can come back." And I was like, "Oh, all right, never know." And it's funny because the one, if you remember this year, it was like a bad snowstorm, I want to say in January or something like that, where like it was a Saturday, so we were supposed to have a show.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it got canceled or whatever. So all the wrestlers, all the boys were stuck indoors or whatever, and I got a phone call from the same guy saying, "Call Pat on Monday. He wants you back. Let's talk." And I was like, "Oh, all right, cool." And then that was it. Like the rest is history. Like we squashed all the bullshit, and I smartened up and I matured. But there was a time frame where I was just like miserable with wrestling, and I wanted it out completely. I was like, "Fuck this, I'm done." Like this wrestling. Like if you're in it, it'll burn you the fuck out, man. They will. Like it'll burn you out because you're just trying to be the best and be on top and be the number one guy here and do all that. Like and people, it's very easy to get bitter and get upset. Like you gotta have a thick skin. If you can't take the heat, like just get out now because it's the hardest thing in the world to just accept the fact that sometimes you're going to do wrong, and I did wrong for a long time. But right now, and I said this on Saturday after the show, I'm having the most fun I've ever had right now in this moment. And these moments leading up to our last 2 shows, and coming up in November, and all the shit going forward, it's just a lot of fun now.
Were you bitter during the time you were filming for WNLY?
Very.
Very?
Very. Only
you
because...
hit it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, I came into wrestling wanting to be... Simply, I wanted to be an ass kicker. You know what I mean? I wanted to be... That's where the name comes from. Dave D-Struction. It sounds like, okay, I don't want to fuck with this guy. That was what I wanted to be. And when I came back into the WLNY stuff, where I was doing on-air personality things with David Adams, the other partner, not Pat, because Pat was just in control of the wrestling part of it. The other partner was in control of the production of that television show. And when I say that he just did shit just to pop himself and to make himself laugh, it was done like that. Like, if you remember, if you guys are any fans of that show, if you ever watched that show.
Yeah, of course.
We watched it every week.
Right. And you heard me drop the most corniest one-liner of all times, "Man, that's fresh."
Yeah.
Do you think a guy 6'2", 245 pounds is going to say, "Man, that's fresh"? Like, it was the dumbest thing I've ever done, and I was so angry all the time. Like, I would crush my ass into the rec center when I was hurt, and I would try to film this shit, and this guy would just be laughing at himself just because he just wanted to pop himself. It was kind of disturbing. Like, all right, dude, like, let's get back to the wrestling part of this, So that's why, as much as it was fun to be on TV and to be a voice, and I could have continued that voice, but that was when I was like, all right, look, the only way I'm going to get away from this guy is if I get back in the ring with Pat. You know what I mean? Like on that front.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I did. I was like, all right, screw this shit. I'm going back to wrestling. This is corny.
Yeah.
So as I said, there was a lot of times where I was just like, all right, enough's enough. So that was part of my bitterness, was the partner of that company, of just not getting along with him and not understanding some of the things he did. He was just very, I don't know, if you've met him, he's whatever. I don't shoot on any. I don't shoot on anybody or anything like that because it's not my place. But
I personally never met him.
No, but I'm saying if you want to go by statistics, when's the last time that other company ran a show? When's their next show?
Right.
Yeah,
there is not. So obviously he ain't doing shit right, and he's finally getting called out on his BS. So Yeah, so for that time I was a little bitter, but as I said, right now I'm in a really, really good spot. Really happy with both my wrestlers, co-wrestler friends embracing me as a possible new voice of the company, where they can come to me in the pre-show and say, make sure I'm going to be doing this, make sure you put it over on commentary, or I'm doing this, or I'm from that, or bill me from here, or this, that, and the other. Like, there's just it's a different dynamic, and it's being behind the scenes of a pro wrestling company that you think, that I personally believe is on the rise. So what better way to just be in this form rather than back in the day where it was just rain with politics.
I just wanted to ask a serious question before they ask a question. How many of those bachelor parties did you do?
Oh, bachelor parties.
Yeah. I wanted to have Derek's bachelor party with PWS.
Oh, well, don't do it for PWS, but we still do them here with Wrestlpro, so definitely hit me up and we'll set that
up. Nice.
I wanted to ask you, like, what was your opinion on the way that WWE changed the layout of the commentary and, like, set up the new teams with, like, Corey Graves and Morrow?
I personally am a big fan of commentary, as clearly, I have to be if I want to get into this. I prefer the SmackDown guys over the Raw.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people shit on JBL. I kind of love him.
I love him.
I think he's funny as shit. So between him and Morrow on that show, it's awesome. For me, that's the better show. Corey Graves, very knowledgeable, so I think he got a good job and a good spot. Unfortunate circumstance with him, kind of almost the same as mine.
That's what I was same as you.
Yeah, so like it's cool because I'm a fan of people that have done it as a part of the broadcast team. Like, I don't like when two little twerps are calling wrestling as if they know what they're talking about. You have to have somebody that's been there, done that kind of deal. It kind of gives it a better element. Which that has. I mean, Jerry the King Lawler for the longest time. We knew him as a wrestler first before he got on with JR. You know what I mean? JR never stepped foot in the ring, but he's a broadcaster, so it was a good dynamic. So it's always good to have a good mix.
So are you a fan of them moving the table back to the ramp?
I mean, to me, as long as they have monitors, so their production is so much different. Mm-hmm. I don't think it matters. I think it gives a chance for more activity to go on outside the ring in that area where there's not tables in the way. I guess if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
we want the table.
I mean, put them through the table.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, like that. They have that, and it is what it is. Like, they always try to switch stuff up. If you remember back in the day, that's where Vince and Jesse the Body were always so far away from the ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're giving it that nostalgia, old school feel.
Do you ever go back and listen to like Jim Ross or Gordon Soley, see how they commentate?
No.
No,
not really. I only have so much time for so many things.
Okay.
I really ain't gonna have a chance to get that.
Do you rather call stuff by yourself, or do you like having a partner, a play-by-play color?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I prefer color. I prefer to be the color guy rather than the play-by-play. That's just my style. It's just the way I like things. But it's always easier with somebody else out there. I always thought that the toughest job ever was Joey Styles doing it on his own. Like, that, I don't give a shit who you are. That shit's gotta be hard. Like, calling all the action, kind of coming up with her own catchphrase and yada, yada, yada. It's definitely easier when there's somebody out there with you, helping you and guiding you. And you can play off each other. Like, you're never gonna see that again where it's just one guy. There's always gonna be a team now, so it's definitely easier.
You want to tell us about, I know you guys had 2 shows for Wrestlpro this weekend. First, before we get into that, is that going to be like a new thing for Wrestlpro? Are you guys going to be doing like 2 shows every time you put out shows?
I think it was just an opportunity that presented itself, to be honest with you, for this time. I know in November we have back-to-back shows again, which kind of gives it the illusion that we're going to be running 2 shows at a weekend, but I think it's just kind of circumstantial. Like, it's not like it's something that we planned on. It's just if a venue comes up to us and says, hey, we want to do this on this day, are you available? And we already have a show on that Saturday, we're like, yeah, we'll do it on Friday. This week, I mean, we have such a good core roster of guys and guys that help out. It was easy to pull off. As I said, the the locations of both shows were different. Cresskill was up near the George Washington Bridge, and then Brooklyn was right over the Goethals. So it wasn't really that hard. A little time consuming, no big deal. But yeah, it was just kind of weird how it all played out like that. And so now I know in November we're back home in Rahway, and then we got I think in Newark the following Sunday or something like that.
Yeah, Newark. Yeah, definitely saw.
And it looks like there's a common trend that Ryback seems to be one of our new core stable guys, because he's going to be on pretty much every show now. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's big. That's big for Wrestlpro for sure.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. Definitely an awesome dude.
Did you call him the Ryback backstage because he changed his name, or
the Ryback? No, I call him Ryan.
Right?
I call him Ryan. But yeah, that's I honestly found that to be so funny that he pretty much pulled a Warrior and said, you know what, I'm gonna own my own name now. So good luck trying to take that from me, which is actually pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I know Daniel Bryan likes to call him the Ryback. And Cody Rhodes.
Yeah. I that's funny.
You hear the Panera Bread story?
Which Panera Bread story?
With Ryback and Cody Rhodes and Daniel Bryan. He didn't know, it was his first time there, and he didn't know what to order.
Oh yeah, that's on a table for three, right?
Yeah, and he ordered one of everything or something.
Yeah. That was actually pretty funny. I mean, I met Ryback in 2012, or no, 2012 with Pat took me and if you know who, obviously you know who Habib from the car wash is.
Yeah, of course.
It was me, Habib, and at the time he had a partner named Christian or whatever.
The Suburban Outfitters.
Yeah, Suburban Outfitters. Yeah, it was those two guys and myself. Pat took us down to Trenton for a house show, and right after the show, and this is to my surprise, I had no idea. We were the show was over and we got in the car. We were driving back, and Pat gets a text. And then he looks next to, me in the passenger seat. He goes, "You hungry?" I said, "Yeah, I'm hungry. Well, what's up?" He's like, "Oh, we're going to grab something to eat." I said, "All right, cool." And we go to this restaurant, and I said, I was like, "Whose place is this?" He's like, "Mike Chioda has a lot of guys that go here." I'm like, "Chioda the ref, Chioda?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, cool, all right." So I'm thinking "Oh, cool, I'll meet Mike Chioda. That'll be awesome." Turns out the entire roster was there eating.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, so I met everybody that night. It was actually pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I met Ryback that night, and he polished off about 40 wings right in front of me. So I sat there, and I was like, "Well, I guess this feed me more shit ain't fake." He definitely eats.
You didn't want to challenge him?
No shot. The guy. I said to myself when I saw him. I met him then, but then I saw him on Friday, and I went to Chris Payne, and I said to him, "Chris," and I was like, I used to think I was big. I used to think I had some muscle to me, and I worked out, and I looked okay. And then I see a guy like Ryback, and I'm like, I should just probably quit lifting altogether, because it's just pointless trying to compete.
Are there any highlights from this weekend that stand out from the shows?
Oh, shit, man. There's so many talented guys in this roster that every time they step foot in the ring for Wrestlpro, it's always magic. Like Mario Baccara, if you watch that guy, he's like this hidden gem that nobody ever, really gave a shot. He was an OVW, he did all that stuff too, and he's probably in the prime of his career right now, which it says something, all the experiences that he's had. So he opened the show with Matt McIntosh, and McIntosh was only about 4 or 5 years in, and those guys tore the roof off, and they were opening match. So in commentary, I'm looking next to me, and I'm with Shiny Edward Jackson was doing commentary with me at that time, and I said to him, I was like, how the hell? I'm off camera, obviously, in the middle of the match. I said, how the frig are we going to follow that shit? How do you get the crowd up so high? And then we did it again. The next night, we started the next night off with Kevin Matthews versus Robbie E, and it turned into a tag team match or whatever. But at the same time, it was so good and so impactful. I was like, shit, man, what are you going to do for an encore? Yeah. But Pat does the booking very well, to the point where it's always going to keep the crowd interested. And Friday was great. Obviously the main event was Ryback and Pat versus the Bodies, and the Heavenly Bodies are by far the greatest tag team in indie wrestling right now. I'm not just saying that because they're my buddies, but they're that talented. Yeah. They're that good, and they gel, and they look the part, and their gear is awesome, and it's just the manager, that little stable they got going on, the Edward Jackson 5, everybody that's in that is amazing.
Yeah.
Chris Payne's one of my really good friends in the business, but outside the business too. And that guy's got a burning passion for what he does. And he's trying real hard. I mean, he was just featured on NXT a couple weeks ago. And and another guy, two guys, Anthony Bowens, Bobby Wayward, fought for the title this past Friday. And those two guys are just hands down like two of the top 5 guys in the company. And it's crazy because Bowens is, it's not a matter of if at this point, it's a matter of when he's going to get signed. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, who knows when, but it's going to happen. And these guys are all literally trained from the ground up from Pat. So that goes to show you what kind of school, Pat runs. You know what I mean? So it's definitely fun. The Friday was incredible. Had a couple great stand-up matches. Saturday was just as good. X-Pac was in the house. I marked out for that. This is cool for them. You grow up watching these guys, and it's cool to meet them and to make sure they're still okay. He's not burnt out like everybody thinks he is. He was still in the ring doing his freaking wheel kicks and dropping kicks and doing all sorts of shit. He's still doing just as much as he did on, a Raw in 1998.
Yeah. So
it was definitely cool to see him. We got a lot of new up-and-comers, like guys in their first 2 years that are just killing it right now. So, I mean, there's so much stuff, and I can't say enough about guys like Dan Moff, who's a mentor of mine, and, he helped me, of all people, he helped me a lot during the time I was hurt. He didn't want to see me discouraged. He would call me every day to make sure I wasn't losing my mind, which goes to show you how, caring he is. As much of an animal that he is in the ring, he's a teddy bear outside the ring, and he'll tell you that too. But, it's funny. Fun fact is, I was wearing, the boots that Brock Lesnar wears, those kind of like this boxing boots kind of deal, where it's like so I was wearing those for a while, and I liked them. I liked how they felt. They were easy to work on, like weightless. And so Kevin Keenan, the referee, says to me, he goes, "Dude, you need boots. You're too big to be wearing this stuff. You need boots." And I'm like, I can't afford it. I'm like, I can't afford boots. Boots are like $400 for good ones, And at the time, I was only working whatever I was working on at the time. But I was like, I didn't have any money. So Dan Moff literally gave me his first pair of boots he ever had. And it's crazy because the stories he tells me about these boots, I believe them all, He's in the ring with Foley, Punk, Dana Bryan, across in Japan, like AJ Styles, like those are the boots he wore to wrestle those guys in. And so I had like, in my head, I was like, shit, these are big shoes to fill, and that's not just physical. You know what I mean? Like, I gotta make him proud. So I did the best I could, but obviously, but Moff is just a phenomenal dude, and he's one of my best friends in the business, and he's awesome. But between the Friday and Saturday, both shows are amazing, and I said it on Saturday on social media, after that Ryback Dan Moff match, it might be my favorite match ever, and I'm talking WWE included. Like, they beat the shit out of each other, and it was like, I called that match as a professional, as professional as I could, but B, I called the match the entire time with like a smile on my face. You know what I mean? Awesome. Like, this is like, I was like a kid in a candy store. I was like, this is friggin' nuts. This is the hardest hitting guy in the indies versus the biggest big guy that made it to the show. You know what I mean? So it was just incredible, and there's so much to look forward to. I mean, November we're bringing in Broken Matt and Brother Nero, or whatever they're going by now. The Hardy Boys are coming in to tag up with Ryback and Pat to take on the EJ5, and that's November. So there's a lot of stuff, TBA, obviously things are coming in, things are coming in pretty hot, and this is all leading up to our big spot in Orlando. So the future is very bright for this company. I'm very excited.
Yeah, you could see bright things on the horizon.
Definitely. You guys have some great talent. I think, Bowens, I think he's kind of like how JBL says, if you like build a wrestler from the ground up, I feel like it would definitely be like Bowens is that mold of like that wrestler. And, I just think like Mario Baccarat, like I just love that guy. I think he's like the Triple H. That's who I compare him to. He's so physical, and he's just so, I love type of wrestlers like that, like Sheamus type wrestler. I think he's one of the greatest wrestlers that's there too.
When he was defeated, I was heartbroken.
Yeah, seriously.
Right. It's like, and he still kills it to this day. I mean, we're all in this business. We're all humble enough to know that, having a belt is cool, but just having a good match every time you go out there is better. You know what I mean? Like, a belt to us is a prop. I mean, it's a very big honor. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, to be called the champion of a organization is awesome. But it's not about that. You know, it's about these guys putting on an amazing show every time they step in the ring. It's just an honor to be out there every time and just to see it from front row, basically, you know?
So, since you had your match with Hacksaw, and I know, like, Flair was just there, Cody Rhodes was there, you know, you say you've hung out with, like, Ryback, all these guys. Like, has anyone actually made you been starstruck before?
Tell you what, I got to see Flair, and that was cool. Like, he was a very cool dude, but I was like, I'm 4 years in now, and I'm like, okay, you know, anybody I see is going to be cool. But I tell you what, the only time, and I stand by this, all these wrestlers that I wrestle with, for whatever reason, they have no problem asking me for photos, you know, with these guys. And I don't do it. I just never, I don't know, Pat instilled this in me not to be a fanboy, you know, when you're working with professionals. But I couldn't help myself. And I think it was May of 2013. I met Jake the Snake Roberts, and this was right after he was like at his worst, and he was just beginning his comeback, you know. And like his story, I don't know if you watched the documentary, but it's like,
yeah,
it is something. It is magical to know that like if you just can bounce back from being in legitimately the depths of hell, like he was. You know, I was like, I'm sorry, and I told him too. I was like, I don't typically do this, but I need a photo with you, simply because I respect you, and I'm proud as shit of your story, and I'm just in complete utter awe. And he's like, of course, in his voice, he's like, all you gotta do is ask for a picture. And I was like, all right. Meanwhile, I'm like, well, I'm your biggest fan, you know, like marking out like a little fanboy, but you know, but he was really cool. And there's so many people I've met where I think the only people that's got all the boys makes jokes about me and my fanhood for Ryback, because I've always tried to either wear the gear like him or just try to be like him as best as I can. So like obviously when Friday came around and I got to the building, everybody's like, "Hey, there he is, Dave. Go take a picture, Dave." You know, and I was just like, I'm like, just fucking leave me alone. You know, like I got to talk to him a little bit after that, but it was cool. But I think if anything, going forward, if we ever brought in like Shawn Michaels, I think I would have a hard time, because he's my favorite ever, and like he's the reason why I got into wrestling. He was literally, and I tell this story to everybody I talk to, like brand new, but he was the first thing I ever saw in wrestling was it was a Sunday morning at like 11 o'clock, WWF Superstars, when I was like 6 years old. The first thing I ever watched was the barbershop episode where he messed up Jannetty. That was the first thing I ever saw. So I was like, this guy is so badass. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And like from there, it just was off to the races. Here I am, like literally crying at one of my boys' house one day when he lost to Taker and his career was over. I was like, this can't be real. You know? Yeah. So dude, I was so much freaking fanboy for him. I literally went to WrestleMania in Atlanta just because I knew he was getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, and I went that year. So I was like, I have to go. Like, I was that big of a fan. It was almost borderline ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they could get Shawn Michaels. They've got a lot of big names coming through.
I know. Believe me, though, these guys, you know, they're not cheap. So, they're not cheap.
They got Flair. I mean, that's...
This is true. This is true. My fingers are still crossed.
And a lot of shows are bringing in, like, Sting and stuff like that. So I'm hoping, you know, because that's what I like to do. I like to go get the autographs and pictures.
Yeah. I mean, all these guys come in, and most of them are really, really nice. I mean, I've never really met a guy, because I mean, when you grow up, you're kind of worried that like when you meet these guys, they're going to be larger than life. They're going to be like dickheads, you know. But like, I really haven't met like an asshole, you know. Like they're all been pretty cool with me and cool with the company, and they're just happy to be there. And you know, some of these guys are putting us over and praising us more than anybody else, like DDP and like, you know, just different dudes. I met a lot of people, man. A lot of people, like Paul Bear, like 2 months before he passed away. Like he was awesome. It was just, it's a lot of cool shit in wrestling.
All right, Dave, do you have anything that you want to plug, or any upcoming shows or anything like that?
Well, I told my buddy Don Brower I'd do him a solid and promote his show, his UPWA. He's actually coming up on a show in New Jersey. I do not know the town. I forget it. Oh, well, I don't know when this is going to air, so it might be after this. It might be before. I don't know. But Saturday, October 22nd, he's got a big show, or trying to book a big show over in New Jersey. And obviously Wrestlpro, go to Wrestlproonline.com for all the tickets and stuff like that. And November 19th, we are in Rahway. November 20th, we're in Newark. December, I'm not really sure yet. But obviously just follow us all on social media just to keep up with everything. We're literally surpassing so many expectations as far as social media coverage. So it's been pretty cool. And, I guess just follow me on all my social medias and stuff, which I guess is, Dave D-Struction on Instagram without an E, so it's just Dave and D-S-T-R-U-C-T-I-O-N. And on Twitter, which is at Dave Sturch. And then Facebook, you can find me on all the Wrestlpro stuff.
Cool. Right, and you can follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Wrestling IQ 101.
And we want to thank you for coming on with us, Dave. We really appreciate you taking the time out and, just giving us some insight on Wrestlpro and your background and everything. And we, hope to do this sometime again soon.
Yeah, man. Whenever you guys want, man. Hopefully see you guys in November. All you guys come to the show, and I'll hook you up with some of the Wrestlpro guys. Maybe set up shop at the show and get some interviews with these guys.
Yeah,
thanks, man.
We'll definitely be there. Appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Keep in touch, fellas.
All right. Thanks, man.